Hello, my friends. Today we're going to talk about diaphragmatic breathing or slow abdominal breathing. You may have heard of belly breathing before, and this is similar. Belly breathing is a component, if you will, to diaphragmatic breathing. It's a little bit more in depth than just breathing into the belly. I'm going to talk about what it is, why we use it, and what the benefits are, and then break it down step by step so that you can begin to incorporate it in your breathwork practice. I'll also answer some questions along the way, and hopefully we'll have some fun. Now, diaphragmatic breathing is really just that. We're really focusing on that diaphragm. Your diaphragm is a muscle that lays just below the lower ribs. So we inhale and we do diaphragmatic breathing. We're pulling that diaphragm down into our belly. And what that does is it allows for our lungs to fully expand. It allows us to get more oxygen. It allows our organs in our chest to have a little bit more space for a moment. And then as we exhale, we bring that diaphragm back in. And that has benefits too. I do want to point out, in diaphragmatic breathing, the exhalation is as just important as the inhalation. So when you bring that out, you're squeezing out all that air as much as you can. And by doing so, you're strengthening the lungs. You're also doing, for my friends with vaginas, you're also doing a little bit of a Kegel in doing that, which also has a lot of benefits. Now, our core, because we're engaging the whole core in diaphragmatic breathing, it's not just our belly. So our core includes our lower back. It also includes that pelvic floor. And so diaphragmatic breathing really gets into all of those spaces. By doing diaphragmatic breathing, it helps us get out of our sympathetic nervous system, or that fight or flight feeling that we might have. If we're feeling stressed out, we're about to get into a fight that feels like there's some danger around us, we've got a deadline due, what have you. If we're starting to feel stressed out, we're starting to feel that fight or flight come on, diaphragmatic breathing can bring us back into a parasympathetic or a rest and digest state. So it can really calm us down. It also, because we're expanding that breath, lengthening it, slowing it down, we're going to increase our heart rate variability. Now, heart rate variability, each beat that our heart takes, there's some variability each time it beats. And if you've got a watch like I do, that tells you what your heart rate is and your resting heart rate, it rounds it up to this whole number. But there's milliseconds of differences. And studies have shown that the greater those distances become in that heart rate variability, the more that we can reduce stress, reduce cortisol. We also find that it is linked to increased physiological and psychological resilience. It's also connected to higher cognitive functioning. So heart rate variability is a phenomenal thing to amplify as much as you can. Diaphragmatic breathing is a tool to bring that together. So the other piece is, I talked about our whole trunk being all around us. We're adding more mobility to our core, to our trunk, if you will. And so, because I'm going to show you in just a moment how to breathe into your diaphragm, into the whole core cavity. By doing so, you're going to get more mobility in your ribs, in your spine. Your muscles are going to get a little bit of a massage by doing this. This is so important as we age. If you tended to have a stiff lower back, or even in your shoulder blades, this is going to help bring a little bit more mobility to that as well. All right, enough talking about what it is, how do we do it? So I want you to break this down into steps. Now, if you are fully on new to this, let's just look at what a lot of folks do when they breathe. And there's no judgment here. I've talked to dozens, if not hundreds of people who say, I never breathe into my belly. What are you talking about? So you're not alone if this is you. So many of us just breathe directly into our chest. So we're just focusing on that chest. And when I do that, you see my shoulders rising. I feel a little tension in my throat. These accessory muscles, if you will, are what are engaged. So if this is you, you can go look in the mirror. If you're breathing like that, that is chest breathing. And what we're not engaging is our diaphragm. So we're not engaging that whole ability to pull down, make space for the lungs to expand. So let's break it down. Be graceful with yourself if this is a new thing for you. And you can stay at step 1 for a very long time. You could just focus on belly breathing and that would be a tremendous benefit to your breathing overall. So if you want to stay at step 1 for a while before you advance to step 2, 3, 4, that's totally fine. So step 1, we're just focusing on breathing into the belly. I'm going to back up just a little bit so you can see me. And you can do this lying down or seated. I'm just going to stand because that way I can show you a little bit better. But you're going to place your hand on your belly, just right around your belly button. And you're gonna breathe in so that you can make your hand rise off of you. So I talked about showing you the shoulders. Now I'm going to, we'll take it from the side to see if you can see. Now I'm breathing with my mouth open to exaggerate this, but I'm gonna talk about this in just a moment. Do you do nose breathing? Do you do mouth breathing? I'm using mouth breathing right now to show you an exaggerated breath, but we'll talk about that in just a moment. So you might look like this. So you see my belly rising and falling, and I'm letting it expand out, and then I'm contracting it in as I exhale. So just practice with that for a while. If you're lying down, you can place a hand on your chest and a hand on your belly and see if you can minimize the movement in your chest and amplify the movement in your hand and at your belly. So we're already making progress just with that step alone. If you want to stay there, totally fine to do so. Step 2, what we're going to do, we're going to take our hands now and go to our waist. So at my waist, I can feel at the top, the lower part of my ribs, where my ribs start to end. Now I'm gonna breathe into the sides of my hands. Now, as I say this, I wanna still breathe into my belly, so maybe I keep some fingers right here to also feel my belly. So I'm gonna breathe into my belly and into the lower part of my ribs. So I'm expanding out here and I'm expanding out here. And it might take a minute. You might notice I'm breathing into my belly, but I don't quite feel my hands at my hips move. Sometimes I do that too. Sometimes I kind of notice my diaphragm will lower here and I can expand my belly out, but it takes a minute to push out my hands. It's okay, play around with it again, have grace with yourself. So I'm focusing on my belly and then my hands on my hips. Play around with that. Again, you can stop here and just practice these 2 steps. If you've mastered the belly breathing and you want to just focus on this for a little bit, it feels a little tricky, that's okay. You can stop at step 2. For my folks who are ready to go to step 3, now I'm going to place my hands on my lower back. You could also be lying on the ground. If you're lying on the ground, you can imagine your lower back pressing into the ground below you. And again, we're linking everything together. So I'm still breathing into my belly, still breathing into those lower lateral ribs, and now I'm breathing into my lower back ribs. So belly, side, back. You can do it all together or you can do it step by step. Sometimes it's easier to do it step by step. Again, you can make a little bit of an ocean sound with your breath to feel that diaphragm coming down. I do it on the exhale because I think about pulling that diaphragm back in. So I'm kind of bringing my navel to spine. You can see my loose belly, there's my neutral belly. I expand it out. I contract it in. As I'm doing that, my diaphragm is coming up. So breathing into that lower back. And practice that for a while. The movement doesn't have to be drastic. It doesn't have to be dramatic. It could be very subtle, but we're just focusing on breathing into that lower back. Next up, I am going to keep a hand on my belly and one on my chest. I'm still linking together, thinking about my belly, thinking about my lateral ribs, thinking about my lower ribs, and now I do want to breathe into my chest as well. So we're not throwing the bathwater out with the baby with the bathwater. We want to also expand the chest itself, the whole rib cage. So we're not giving up. It's not chest breathing or belly breathing with diaphragmatic breathing. We're incorporating it all. So a hand on my belly, hand on my chest. I'm thinking belly, lateral ribs, lower ribs, and chest here. And now you start to notice you're slowing down. It's a bigger breath. Everything comes together, contracts. Big inhale. You may notice you're able to expand that breath more than you ever have. You can always stay here and practice these 4 components. One last step for you. We're going to breathe into the high back. So this is especially easier if you're lying down, because you can think about pressing into the ground with your lower back as well as right around your shoulder blades. So I'm going to think about, and I'll do this time. I'll hold my lower back, hand right here so I can feel my lateral ribs, and I'm going to breathe into my belly, lateral ribs, my lower back, my chest, and my shoulder blades. And again, you might bring each component online at different steps. For me, it wasn't all fluid at the same time, everything's expanding. I always find it a little bit easier to breathe into my belly and my side, and my upper back and chest kind of come together at the same time. So experiment with it. Again, give yourself some grace. And I would just try 3 to 5 breaths like that. Practice with it a few times a day just to start to incorporate this and start to get your body understanding the movement. So when do you do this? I mentioned you can try this every day for a few breaths. Once you kind of have it down, you want to add this to your practice. I love personally when I'm doing my coherent breath work, which I have a video on, go check it out, link in the description. You can do your coherent breathing with diaphragmatic breathing. And maybe you notice that diaphragmatic breathing, I believe I've got a 10-minute coherent breath work and a 5-minute breath work right now as of the date of this video. If that feels like too long to focus on the diaphragmatic, you could do it for the first 30 seconds or the first minute and then switch over to what breathing feels more comfortable for you. So I definitely don't want you to feel like you have to do one or the other. You could always start with the diaphragmatic and then move to a more, if you're like, I usually just do belly breathing for that, totally fine. Work up, because you are going to feel a little bit of a workout if you haven't done this type of breathing before. So you could incorporate that into your regular breathwork practice. If you have a daily meditation or a daily centering breathwork practice, I would incorporate diaphragmatic breathing into that. The best part is you can use it on the fly. So I mentioned that diaphragmatic breathing brings you out of fight or flight. So anytime you're starting to feel a little panicky, frustrated, stressed out, anything that starts to feel like your sympathetic nervous system is coming online, you can catch it and take 5 to 10 diaphragmatic breaths and see if that parasympathetic nervous system is activated. See if you start to calm down, start to go into more of a rest and digest mode. Now, another question I get quite often is, Amy, do I do it through my nose or my mouth? And I've read such and such book and they say never mouth breathe. I want you to play around with it. This is your practice. So for me, what I like to do is I will either typically do it all through my nose, or I'll inhale through my nose and through pursed lips, breathe out. I find that the pursed lips for the exhalation helps me really think about bringing that diaphragm back up and using that Kegel motion to help me squeeze out every last bit of oxygen. So try to play around with it, experiment. Maybe you really love doing it as a mouth breathing exercise, or maybe you're like, gosh, that dries out my throat too much. I want to do it all through my nose. Play around and see what works best for you. I want to hear more from you about what has been helpful in these breathwork workshops that I've got on YouTube and what you want to see more of. So please like, subscribe, and comment below to let me know what you want to see more of. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you again soon, my friends.